Few minutes with. The first is David Fahrenthold from the Washington Post, and the second is Nate Silver from 538. I want to remind everyone there's an embargo, no tweets, no photos, no nothing. An embargo until 7:30 p.m. tonight. I am certain all of you for another 5 hours and 40 minutes can stay off of Twitter. I have great confidence in your restraint. So we have an embargo until 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. If you will need to have tickets to our 6 p.m. event, the forum across the courtyard. If you need your tickets, you can get them from Christian Flynn or from the foyer where the elevators are on your way out. And I want to just remind everyone that this is an opportunity to get really some crucial things on the record for history. We published 2 books out of this. We have the 2012 and 2008 books outside if you want to pick one up. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Nick Bilton from Vanity Fair and ask him to talk to David.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Oh, I didn't know how to use the microphone. Thank you very much, David. Thanks for doing this. Let's just jump right in, and because we only have a little bit of time. And can you tell us a little bit about what were you doing before you started covering Trump? You were writing about Bigfoot, right?
Yes. So I've covered East Coast Bigfoot conventions in the past, and you guys should know there's a lot of prejudice in the Bigfoot community among the establishment Bigfoot people on the West Coast against those on the East Coast. But I've covered politics for a while, and I spent 2015 covering kind of long shot candidates. Jindal, Pataki. I wrote the seminal profile of Jim Gilmore, things like that.
Sorry, I missed that piece.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's pretty amazing.
And so then what was it, what event took place that got you to start looking at Trump and his philanthropic giving?
Well, because all my candidates had dropped out, I was in Iowa following Trump around on caucus day, and I saw him in Waterloo, Iowa, one of a number of events he did that day, where he was giving away the proceeds of the fundraiser. Remember, he skipped a Fox News debate and held this fundraiser for veterans, said he raised $6 million.
And he had a big check?
Yes. Yeah. So he was giving away $1 million of his own, and he was giving a big check to these local veterans groups. Every campaign rally, he'd call people up and say, local Waterloo Veterans Group, here's $100,000. And the big check said, Donald J. Trump Foundation on the top, Make America Great Again on the bottom. And it's important to know that as federal tax law prohibits you from mixing your charity with a political campaign. So after seeing that, it made me interested in finding out more about those donations. And also I realized that he'd stopped giving out the big checks after only having given out about $1 million of the $6 million.
And so you decided, okay, I'm gonna call every nonprofit in America, and because that's what I would do. I mean, so how do you get from there to that?
Well, so fast forward to the end of May, and I've been calling the Trump campaign and asking them, what happened to the rest of the money? Has he given his $1 million away? And was getting some answers, but wasn't accounting for all $6 million of the dollars. And then something really interesting happened. Corey Lewandowski, who was here today,
Stay here, Corey. Don't go far.
Mr. Lewandowski called me and said, Mr. Trump has given away the $1 million. This is late May, 4 months after the fundraiser. Mr. Trump has given away the $1 million he said he would give out of his own pocket to veterans. And I said, well, great. Who did he give it to? When did he give it to them? In what amounts? That's a secret. Can't tell you. It's all I can tell you is it's been fully spent. But I didn't want to take it just on that word, so I set about trying to prove Trump right, prove Corey Lewandowski right. So I started on Twitter. I can't call every veterans group in America, but I was tweeting at them so other people and Donald Trump would see what I was doing, and people could come forward and tell me, oh, I got some of that money, or Trump could come forward and tell me, oh, here's who I gave it to. After a day of tweeting at people, I'd accomplished nothing. I'd found nothing. I felt like a complete failure.
That's usually what I feel like on Twitter every day.
Exactly. I thought, well, that was just a day of wasted. Social media sucks. I'm never doing it again. But what turned out was that night, after I had done all the tweeting, that's when Trump gave the $1 million away. So earlier, when we've been told he'd been giving it away, he hadn't. He only gave it away after we'd been looking for it.
And so, so how did you pick you actually spoke to 400 different groups. How did you pick them? Was it just random dartboard, or what was the process?
So that was sort of the second phase of this. After the veterans thing ended, we figured out where the money had gone. Then I started trying to account for all the other money that Trump said he'd given away over his lifetime. And there we were given no help again. It was a secret. He's given away tens of millions of dollars. It's a secret. So I started looking at charities that he seemed close to. Charities he'd given money to from the Trump Foundation, which is in recent years been other people's money. Charities that he'd gone to their galas, charities he praised on Twitter. I started that list and started posting photos of my list on Twitter. So again, Trump could see it, and so people, other charities that may have gotten money could come forward and say, oh, hey, you didn't ask me, but here's what I got.
So you're doing a lot of this on Twitter. I know this may be hard to believe for a lot of the people in the room, but there were probably some people that weren't very nice to you that supported Trump on Twitter. What kind of messages did you get from Trump supporters?
Well, in general, I actually, my experience on Twitter was fairly positive. I had a lot of people who came forward and wanted to help. In fact, some Twitter users helped me track down a particular portrait he'd bought with charity money that he was hanging in his golf resort. And the Trump campaign wasn't helping. They weren't providing this information. So I wanted to show people how open I was, that I was soliciting opinions, ideas from anyone. And if somebody wanted to come forward and say, hey, Donald Trump, I think he gave money to X group, I would go check into it. So there's a particular guy who was not a current Trump staffer, but had been a Trump staffer at one point. On Twitter one day was he and I talked earlier in the campaign, and then late in the campaign he starts abusing me on Twitter. You're terrible. You hate Trump. You're trying to you're trying to make him look bad. I know of a charity that he gave to, and I said, oh great, tell me and I'll look it up. I won't tell you. And then we went around and around, and I'm sure he's being very sort of mean, and I'm trying to be very, very nice to show everybody else how happy I am to have an idea, to have a suggestion. So finally I'm like, well, can I guess letters? Maybe is there an M in this charity? Is there an R in this charity? And finally he gives it to me. It was one that I had already checked out, and Trump hadn't given them any money. So that was a dead end, but I still wanted to show how grateful I was. I said, thank you so much. This is on Twitter in front of everybody. Thank you so much. You've done more than the Trump campaign has. You've at least given me one charity to check out. So this may have been contentious, but I want to say thank you. And then later on, he DMs me and he was like, "You are an insufferable dick. I'll never talk to you again." So even I was trying.
Even the people you were actually talking to were not that.
But I
nice.
hope that other people got the impression they could come to me.
The Trump campaign never spoke to you for about the story, or they did?
They did occasionally. So I talked to Corey in May. There were a couple other times when they answered questions, but in general they did not. And so then I started posting my questions on Twitter, because there was a particular time when I'd asked them. There were 5 charities that Trump said he'd given money to, or the Trump Foundation said they'd given money to. The charities said they never got the money. So I asked the Trump campaign, what's the deal here? Are these charities are they bad record keepers? Did you really give them this money? No response. Story comes out, says there's 5 charities with these questionable donations. They then give the information to a TV network, so that then when I go on the TV network, I can be confronted with, there are these problems in your story. So then I started posting the questions that I sent to the Trump campaign also, so people would know, at least I tried to get this information. I'm asking about it, even if I'm not getting an answer.
So how do you, you're writing about, not to be rude or anything, but a pretty boring topic, philanthropic giving. And you've got this situation where you have this candidate who, every time he tweets, it's almost like one of those little cat lasers for the media, and they just kind of zip off in the other direction. How do you get readers interested in a story about something like this when you have what's going on in the daily media cycle?
You're assuming they were interested, but I'll take that. I think one thing I think is really important about covering Trump, and that is I got the freedom from Marty Baron, our editor, from Jeff Bezos, our owner, to just follow one subject and not have to chase his daily words, to just follow one topic and stay in that lane and understand Trump's actions. That was really important. I think people care about that. People care about what he actually did as opposed to what he said. So that was one thing. And the other thing was there was this great scavenger hunt element to it. And that was something I couldn't have planned for at the beginning, but there were these portraits of Trump, one $20,000 portrait, one $10,000 portrait, portraits of himself that he bought with money from his charity, which in general you can't do. And the question became, where are those portraits? And I think readers I would hear from readers who were watching videos of other people's proms at Trump courses, hoping they could find in the background a glimpse of it. And in fact, one day we were looking for a particular portrait. There's a Twitter reader, someone I've still never met. She's a stay-at-home mom in Atlanta, and she was scanning all the TripAdvisor user-generated pictures for Trump's golf resort at Doral. There's 350 pictures on that website. Hotel bathrooms, the 18th green, the lobby. She's scanning them 20 at a time to try to find this portrait, and bingo, she finds it. So then we have a picture of it. We know where it was when the picture was taken in February 2016. That same day, as I tweet that out, the reader Allison Aguilar has found this photo, a picture of this photo in Trump's golf course, a picture of this portrait. That night, a guy named Enrique Acevedo, who was an anchor at Univision in Florida, realizes that the golf course is 4 blocks from where he works. He makes a reservation that night. He gets off his newscast at midnight, goes to the golf course, convinces the cleaning staff to let him look around, finds the portrait hanging on the wall. So we went from like that morning at 10 a.m., there's this portrait somewhere in the world, I don't know where it is, to bingo, it's hanging on the wall of Trump's golf course in violation of tax law in 14 hours.
So if you win the Pulitzer, you have to invite them to be part of the speech for it. Let's shift to something else. The famous Access Hollywood tape. Just a question that actually boggles my mind, but I'm sure everyone in the room. Is it more shocking to you that that tape existed, or that 62 million Americans still voted for him after seeing that tape?
I mean, there's a lot of things that matter to people when they're making up their decision about a presidential candidate, and obviously this was something that people took into account and decided that they wanted to vote that way anyway. I can't fault people for that. I was amazed in seeing it just because it was so different than, people said, oh, well, nothing matters. That's sort of one of the irritating memes about this election is, oh, nothing matters. And we talked about these appearances Trump had made on Howard Stern where he'd spoken about women's bodies and things like that. And that was sort of a public performance, and it's how he excused it as such. This is just me acting out as a character in public. But the fact that this was private, and this was him describing his own actions, not like, oh, look at her, she's so hot, but here's what I do, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I might do right now to this actress we're about to meet. That's what made it, I thought, so powerful and so different.
So the tape came to you. We've all dealt with sources in this room and have done everything we can to protect them. With a source like that, do you go to extended measures? I mean, there were stories that people could be sued for millions of dollars and so on. What did you do that to really try to protect the source, or if you want to speak more generally rather than this person?
I really can't say very much about that particular case, and obviously,
just tell me.
Yeah. But yes, that was a worry. We spent a lot of that day. The questions after we got it that we had were, we reached out to the Trump campaign and to NBC.
So you reached out to the Trump campaign, and what did they say originally?
We sent them a transcript of the 2 minutes of the tape, the beginning of the tape that are sort of the rest of it. That last 3 minutes are kind of inoffensive. So the first 2 minutes, the offensive parts, we send them a transcript. They get back to us and say, that doesn't sound like Mr. Trump. Can you send us a video?
And you're like, oh, I'm pretty sure it does.
Well, at the time we thought maybe it could be a hoax, right? The time when you hear his voice, he's on the bus. You can't see his mouth moving. So we need to try to verify that it's him. And so then we sent them the video, and that's when they got back to us and said effectively, yes, it is him.
Do you think if they would have gotten back to you and said, oh, that's a hoax, would you have still run the story?
I think we would have eventually, but if they come back and said, no, absolutely, that's a hoax, so obviously we would have to take that into account and try to reevaluate.
So do you think that all this reporting that you did helped put the Washington Post on the Trump blacklist, or do you take personal responsibility for that? Or
I don't. At the time that Trump blacklisted us and kept our reporters from getting press access to his rallies, he cited a headline on some other story that had nothing to do with. So I don't know what was in his mind, but the one piece of evidence he cited didn't have anything to do with me.
So one of the things that has come out about your reporting is that you continually take notes on spiral notepads. Have you ever heard of Google Docs? I mean, do you listen to music on a record player? Like, why the notepad? Is it
That's
look cool?
I'm an Amish reporter. That's my shtick now. No. So yes, there is a Google Doc because so
it's a prop.
It's a prop. Yeah, and the social media people at the Post were very unhappy with me the first day that I was using this like old Luddite prop. But I think you can communicate a lot of information at one time, by taking a picture of a notepad.
Yeah, got it. I was going to show you how to use Google Docs. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. Are we taking questions from the students, Nico? No. Okay. Sorry, guys. So. You spent, how long were you working on all these stories?
9 months.
9 months. You spent 9 months working on all these stories. And in the end, Donald Trump ends up winning. He lied about giving money to charities, numerous things. Do you feel like it was wasted time? Do you feel disheartened by the work you put in? Like, what's your feeling on all this?
So before the election, I was interviewed by this German reporter, this very dour German persona, and this is still when it seemed like the Access Hollywood tape was going to be the big story of October, and he was like, do you feel like your life has peaked? Like perhaps you will never do anything as good as this again? And then after like three days after,
What was your answer, by the way?
I was like, fine, whatever, I don't care. Like, it's better than writing about Bigfoot. So, and then 3 days after the election, I was interviewed by another German reporter, and he was like, do you think none of it mattered at all? So, I mean, a lot of things mattered in that election. You know, I didn't go into it thinking that I'm going to take down Trump or make him lose. I didn't think, even at the time when he, you know, after the Access Hollywood tape and before the Comey letter, that he was losing because of me.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can say is, you know, now I feel like I understand Trump well. I understand better how to cover him.
Yeah.
And that was going to be, we thought, a useless set of skills if Hillary Clinton had won. And now it could be a very useful set of skills. So, and I have 190,000 Twitter followers who want to be part of this kind of adventure and are sort of hooked on it. So I hope that's an asset going forward.
Well, speaking of none of it mattering at all, we'll go to Nate Silver.